and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
And in the news this week, the LGBT Caucus in the U.S. Senate is going to increase by 100%.
That's true. And of course, the Democrats have taken over the House of Representatives.
And some of Congress's worst anti-LGBT bigots are swept away by a rainbow tsunami.
It's quite a long list. I'm eager to read it to you.
And that rainbow doesn't just refer to LGBT people.
No. There will also now be out LGBT legislators in a record 46 states.
Wow. And a lesbian tree has gone up in Rockefeller Center for Christmas.
And it's not just because it's a Norway spruce. A law, this is amazing, a law in Guyana has been, Guyana.
Let's call the whole thing off.
Guyana, I think, against cross-dressing in public has been struck down.
80 LGBT asylum seekers from that vaunted caravan have reached...
Which we're not paying attention to anymore.
Right. They've reached Tijuana, the border.
Yeah. And Andy loves the lesbian-themed The Prom on Broadway, and he's going to tell you all about it.
Well, that was a highlight of the week.
Yes.
But of course, it was a horrible week in the country and in the world. We had the devastating fires that killed more than 48 people in California. And another shooter in California that killed 12 people at a country music club in Thousand Oaks there. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell and broke 3 ribs. And the president disgraced the United States and Europe. And there's
many ways.
And there's even more evidence that Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in Turkey, but the U.S. is ignoring it.
Yeah. So...
And then Matthew Whitaker, too, which we...
Oh, we'll get to Matthew Whitaker.
Yes, in the news.
So there's all of that, but you hear about all that everywhere. So we are going to give you a little more in depth on LGBT news and specifically the election results. First of all, more than 150 LGBTQ people have been elected to various offices around the United States in this election.
9 federal candidates, 96 state and statewide candidates, 54 local candidates. So
it's a geometric progression of success. It's really good. And as we go,
because people are out now, and more people are out.
And what you see as you go down the list, and we will go down a lot of the list, is that it is as much an asset as anything else these days.
And LGBT people have a lot to do with that because we're now considered, according to the polls, about 6% of the national vote, and 82% of that vote, LGBT vote, went Democrat in this election, 17% Republican, 1% other, I guess.
And being identified as 6% of the electorate overall is also a big jump. That's the highest we've ever been. And that's people who are willing to self-identify in exit polling.
Which more and more young people do, and more young people voted this time.
Yeah.
Record numbers of young people voted.
Now, there are lots of highlights, but of course the marquee race was Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona, out bisexual member of Congress who stepped up to run for the Senate.
We have a picture of her. There she is.
Yes. And she ran, she's run a long time in Arizona as an out bisexual. She originally ran as a Green Party candidate, very anti-war, years ago and lost her first election.
Yes, Martha McSally, her Republican opponent, tried to make her out to be some kind of radical, but she probably voted with Trump more than any other Democrat in the Congress.
She voted with Trump. I've seen a couple of different figures, 62% of the time or 54% of the time, but yes, I mean, we have blasted her several times
Yes.
on this show for making votes with the
Now,
Republicans.
Martha McSally, who she defeated, everybody's saying how gracious she was, what a nice dog she has. But she's not protesting, probably because she wants to be appointed to the seat
The other Senate
that
seat.
is occupied temporarily by John Kyle. Is it John Kyle?
Yes.
Yeah.
He took McCain's seat when McCain died.
So she may be back. She may be in the Senate herself in January.
And Martha McSally, who has she was regarded as certainly to the left of Joe Arpaio in the primary race,
And to the left of Attila the Hun.
but she allied very, very closely with Trump in the Senate race. And one might think, stereotypically, that allying with Trump in Arizona, which he certainly won 2 years ago, would be a good thing to do.
Yep.
But in fact, it seems to have cost her the election. And Kyrsten Sinema is being celebrated far and wide for pulling out this Arizona Senate race and bringing the Democrats some measure of face saving in the Senate races in the midterms.
And we may, well, look, the Florida race is still open as we sit here. Although I see that Mitch McConnell invited Rick Scott down with the freshman class of senators.
Bill Nelson was with the Democrats. They're both up there on the Hill.
Well, Nelson
is a senator.
is a senator.
But it's still very tricky. We don't know where this is going to end up. But currently, I think there are 47 Democrats elected, 51 Republicans. It's not like we're going to take the Senate, but it certainly would be nice
47 Democrats and then the 2 independents.
I'm including the 2 independents.
in the 47.
We still have the Mississippi race with Mike Espy in a runoff against the lynching fan woman. And the Florida
Mike Espy,
race.
African-American, would be the first African-American elected since Reconstruction in Mississippi.
He's a total underdog in the race, but so are a lot of other people who pulled it out. So we're still waiting, Mississippi and Florida, but the worst we can end up is 53-47, and the best we can end up is 51-49. So we'll see how those races go. There's a runoff in Mississippi. There may be a there wouldn't be a runoff in Florida. There just would be endless recounts until they
And it's nice to
finally
see more and
decide.
more Republicans at least saying that they'll come out to protect Mueller. We were out in the streets trying to protect Mueller the moment that we left this show. We heard that Jeff Sessions was fired, and we were out in the streets about it.
All right, so then the House of Representatives. So we had 6 out members of Congress in the House, plus Tammy Baldwin in the Senate. Tammy won a really, I think, resounding victory in Wisconsin.
Despite all the money poured in there by the Koch brothers.
Tens of millions of dollars. We were very worried for her a year ago.
Especially since Trump won the state.
Exactly, and Scott Walker was governor. Well, we got rid of Scott Walker, miraculously, and Tammy won big.
It's not a miracle, it's hard work, and you did it.
That's correct. So now we have 2 women in the United States Senate, 1 lesbian, 1 bisexual, and that is the LGBT Caucus at the moment in the U.S.
Do not count
Senate.
closet cases.
Well, they are not. So those are the out members. So the House had 6 out representatives. Kyrsten went off to run for the Senate. Jared Polis went off to run for governor of Colorado. Again, another great win in Colorado. Everybody is very, very happy about that, and everybody's celebrating him and his husband, and his big celebration in Colorado. So the 4 remaining out representatives, Sean Patrick Maloney, Mark Pocan and Mark Takano, and David Cicilline, all got reelected.
None of whom are from the Poconos.
And then we have 3 new ones.
Yep.
Sharice Davids, who is my new candidate for President of the United States.
Big celebration there.
Yes, let us show Sharice's crowds. This is the celebration for a Native American lesbian martial arts fighter being elected to the U.S. Congress.
In the suburbs of Kansas City, Kansas.
Yes, Kansas.
Well, the suburbs have been turned.
Well, it's amazing and wonderful.
We're from the suburbs.
And let me not leave out that she is a lawyer. I think she went to Harvard. And
And mixed martial arts?
Yes. Well, we showed her with the pose last week.
Last time.
But she's in the House, and the other members of the House newly elected are Katie Hill from California, pulled out a very tight race. She
Bisexual.
is out bisexual, and she beat sitting U.S. member of Congress, Steve Knight. He is the son of Pete Knight, who in 2000 put together Prop 22 in California that banned same-sex marriage. So beating his son, who was an incumbent member of the House, was a really big deal for out bisexual Katie Hill.
Yep. And Steve Knight himself supported Prop 8. He was against banning conversion therapy. So,
all right. Yeah. So
and he has a gay brother who came out. Didn't affect him.
Yeah. Now we have a couple of other members of Congress. Where are they?
No,
we do.
Well, we'll
maybe
get to
not.
them because
maybe.
I have a list of
all right.
everybody.
No, that makes a total of 8. So maybe that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to put this graphic up. It's not about specific members of Congress. It's about the white men, in this case, who voted against the Affordable Care Act, and who they've been replaced for. Can you put that up on the screen? Look at that. All these horrible old white men who've been replaced by the Rainbow Tsunami, a completely multicultural group.
The point is made by portraying them in black and white and portraying the winners in color.
But they're also, many of them are people of color.
Yeah.
And
they both men are, and many of the women.
Yes.
Also, congratulations to all the black women in Texas who were elected to judgeships. That was also pretty stunning.
Yes, and let's talk about some of the horror shows that are gone. Also, you talked about Steve Knight. Dana Rohrabacher, 15-term representative in the House. Real monster, used to team up with Jesse Helms to deny AIDS funding, attack the National Endowment of the Arts, attack same-sex marriage. He's gone.
Here's the other member of Congress, Angie Craig.
Oh, yes, Minnesota.
And actually, there's another one, too.
Lesbian mom.
Lesbian mom beat Jason Lewis, incumbent Republican, who equated gay couples with rapists.
That's nice.
Yep. Lucy McBath in Georgia beat Karen Handel, who was the one who beat John Ossoff in the special election last year. Karen Handel did not support allowing adoption by gay and lesbian couples.
And she was beaten by a gun reform advocate.
Yes.
This was Newt Gingrich's old district.
Well, Lucy McBath's son was killed.
Yes. That's why she got into politics.
Yes. And she's African American, and she beat Karen Handel.
Pete Sessions is gone. He's the one who called the Pulse, said the Pulse massacre. Pulse wasn't a gay bar. He's gone. He got a 0 rating from HRC. He lost to an African-American civil rights lawyer.
Colin Allred.
Yes.
In Oklahoma, Republican Steve Russell, who in 2016 introduced a bill that would have provided religious exemptions to Obama's executive order banning LGBTQ discrimination among federal contractors, lost to Kendra Horn, first Democrat to win that congressional district in 44 years.
Some of the other bigots that are gone, Mike Bishop in Michigan, Dave Bratt and Barbara Comstock in Virginia, Rod Bloom in Iowa, Randy Holtgren in Illinois, Mike Kaufman in Colorado, Keith Rothfuss in Pennsylvania, maybe Mia Love in Utah. We're not sure.
We don't know yet. She's gaining ground.
Claudia Tenney in New
Well,
York.
the funny thing about Mia Love is that Trump got up and condemned her for not campaigning
Loving
with
him
him,
enough.
and she may end up back in the House. That might be worth it.
Dean Heller's gone in the Senate.
Yes,
and of course
to Jackie Rosen.
And in the governorships, we were really behind in the governorships.
Chris Kobach is gone, although he may turn up in the White House.
We now have 23 Democratic governors, 25 Republicans, and 2 undecided. We flipped Michigan from Bill Schuette. Bill Schuette ran and lost to Gretchen Whitmer. We have somebody who's going to reinstitute LGBT rights, and Janet Mills, of course, in Maine. succeeding that horror show, Paul LePage. She didn't beat him. He couldn't run again.
Yeah, but she beat his preferred successor. Wilton Manors, Florida, which is a gay town in Broward County, I think, or near Fort Lauderdale. Now has an all LGBT mayor, city commission. It is second only to Palm Springs as the city that is run all LGBT.
And significantly, we flipped 6 state legislatures: Colorado, Minnesota, Maine, New York, New Hampshire. We have a new supermajority in Oregon, and we broke the Republican supermajorities, very significant, in North Carolina, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. This means that they all have Democratic governors. This is going to be tremendously significant for the redistricting that goes on after the 2020 election.
And you may remember in North Carolina, Bill James, the Mecklenburg County Commissioner, who was the big promoter of HB2, and he was defeated, which is unbelievable.
And in North Carolina also, civil rights leader Anita Earls was elected to the Supreme Court. 2 Republican amendments to pack that court were defeated. And people are rising up all over the place.
In Texas, 35 LGBTQ people ran for office. 14 of them won. Amazing. In Colorado, trans woman Brianna Titone won a state House seat. Along with the 2 trans women who won in New Hampshire for the legislature there, and Danica Rome already in office in Virginia. That now makes 4 trans women in office in state legislatures around the country.
And in New York, Matt Titone won. He became the new surrogate. He's an assembly member right now. Surrogate is where the money is, folks.
And back in North Carolina, a gay judge, John Arrowwood, I think. I can't read my own writing.
Yep, it's John Arrowwood.
Won an appeals court seat. He's the first out LGBT person elected to statewide office in North Carolina.
And 4 out people were elected to the state house, which is, again, no longer veto-proof. This is going to help the Roy Cooper, the governor there, quite a bit. He can veto things and they can't override them. They can, but they need Democrats.
You've heard of Ayanna Pressley, the black woman from Massachusetts who got elected to Congress. Well, she had been on the city council in a town in Massachusetts. She has been replaced by a trans woman, Althea Garrison, who is a black conservative. Elected as an independent to that seat.
In Arkansas, they elected Tippy McCullough to the State House of Representatives, out. In Arizona, Andres Cano to the State House of Representatives, joining 2 Latinx incumbents who were reelected, Cesar Chavez and Daniel Hernandez, who you know from the Gabby Giffords staff.
A couple of gay Republicans elected. In Wisconsin, Todd Novak reelected to the state assembly. And in the state of Washington, Skylar Rude elected to the state house.
In Oklahoma, pansexual Native American Chelsea Branham was elected to the State House of Representatives.
I'm watching The View the other day.
This is how they list themselves, as pansexual, queer, lesbian, gay, whatever. Pansexual.
And Meghan McCain, in some conversation like this, says, can't we just stop talking about identity politics? Can't we just elect the best person?
Yeah, that'd be nice. It'd be nice if the best person got the jobs, and there wouldn't be so many white men in the Congress if they did.
There are many factors that go into being best, Megan, and we are expanding the category of who's available for that. And perhaps you should treasure these various characteristics and see them as broadening and enriching our lives rather than as something to be sneered at.
And in Minnesota, and it was what's considered a surprise victory, Dave Hutchinson, gay, elected sheriff of Hennepin County.
Yeah. Did you mention Kelvin Anderson in Nevada?
Nope.
He has been, he's an out gay, black state senator, and he has been elected the new majority leader of the Senate in Nevada.
Wow. And let's give people a chance to catch up and take all the notes on what we're doing. Actually, you can look all these results up in your state and elsewhere at victoryfund.org/results 2018, and you can read it all. It's quite heartening.
Let me give you one or two more before we get to the video, which I think is where you're headed. In San Diego, California, the 8th largest city in the country, 3 out of 9 of members of the city council are now LGBT.
Georgia now has 4 out LGBT folks in the State House of Representatives. Missouri elected 2, 2 elected in Montana to the state legislature.
And
Nebraska, 1 bisexual.
And out trans woman Christine Hallquist did not win her race for governor of Vermont, but her son made a documentary about her and her life and her run, and that is now available at the website revry.tv, REVRY.tv.
And in Utah, where Derek Kitchen, out gay activist, was elected to the city council, he's now in the state senate.
All right, are we ready for the video?
Sure. I have a couple of others, but let's talk.
Okay, well, one of the big wins that we told you about last week was Dana Nessel getting elected Attorney General of Michigan. Now, this is only the second lesbian Attorney General that we know of. Maureen Healey in Massachusetts is the other, who's doing a great job there. And Dana Nessel...
And was just reelected.
Yes, and Dana Nessel... defied the national LGBT organizations to bring a lesbian mom's case to the Supreme Court and
started as a lesbian mom's case, became a same-sex marriage case.
Yes, and was put together with the others. But she was, relentless and fearless about bringing that. And then she decided to run for Michigan Attorney General, and I thought, really? But she won!
She did. And she won because she ran ads like this.
Yes.
Dana Nessel, for the people. That's how I introduced myself to the court for over 10 years when I served as a prosecutor. To me, those words weren't just the standard introduction. They were a promise to always fight for justice for the people of Michigan, especially for those who need it most. I have fought and won hundreds of cases, convicting child abusers, murderers, the worst of the worst. I've not only been a prosecutor, but also a defense attorney. Justice is about more than locking up bad people. It's also fighting for good people and protecting our rights. It's about justice for all. I've also fought for the rights of parents, like April and Jane. These 2 nurses opened their home and their hearts, taking in 5 foster children. But in Michigan, they wouldn't allow them to adopt the kids together. They wanted to fight for those rights, and I helped them do it. We took that case all the way to the United States Supreme Court. A lot of people didn't think we could win, but we did. That was a good day. For me, it's more than just about the work. It's personal. Early in my career, I was a single mother to twins who were born premature, sharing their first weeks of life in the NICU and not in my arms. That was hard. Being the next Michigan Attorney General is an opportunity to lay the foundation for a world for my sons to grow up in. While working on the case with April and Jane, I met my own wife, Alana, and now, together, we refuse to sit idle while our state faces some of the worst atrocities of our lifetime. Our sons deserve to grow up in a Michigan that they can be proud of. We owe it to all kids in this state that they grow up in a place with clean, safe drinking water and access to affordable health care. I'm running for Michigan Attorney General because I want to be there, strong, fighting for all the people of Michigan. We have an Attorney General's office that's lost its way. It's not fighting to protect our people. It's wasting our tax dollars protecting big companies who are getting away with polluting our air and our water and letting special interests buy favors. Justice should never be for sale. And when I'm your Attorney General, it never will be. Elect me on November 6th, and no one in this state who needs help, who needs justice, will ever have to wonder who will represent them. I will represent you, and I will work relentlessly towards justice for all.
Makes you kind of want to move to Michigan.
Well, I'm very happy and proud of her and delighted and wish her well and hope she follows through on all of that.
On all of that, it's so important who the attorneys general are because they're the ones who can take on Trump at the local level. And, we have 7 new Democratic governors. The overall vote for Senate nationally, last week I gave you a lower figure, the overall vote among the American people for Senate candidates was 57% Democratic. But the Republicans still picked up a couple of seats.
Well, lest you think these elections
not.
are not important, because there are people who don't vote because they think it doesn't make a difference. The new governor of Kansas is an example, Laura Kelly. She is a real hero for beating Chris Kobach, and she is a Democrat, and
Kobach is a monster.
And so is Sam Brownback, who preceded her.
And people were kind of sick of him, which is one of the things that helped her.
Well, because he ruined the economy of Kansas. But here's what Governor Laura Kelly has said even before she takes office. She is having drafted a new non-discrimination executive order for state employees that covers sexual orientation and gender identity, because they used to have one under Kathleen Sebelius, but Sam Brownback got rid of it. So
Sebelius was a Democrat. She went on to be the HHS secretary under Obama.
Yes, and when and she drafted that for Kansas in 2007. Brownback got rid of it in 2015, and now Laura Kelly is going to institute that non-discrimination policy, and she is also going to stop a proposal to forbid adoption by same-sex couples. Laura Kelly, new Democratic governor of Kansas.
Human being.
Kansas is turning. You want to go to Michigan. I want to go to Kansas. Sharice Davids and Laura Kelly. Hot.
Okay.
All right.
Well, shall we talk about the president?
Okay.
So he did an executive order that prevents migrants from seeking asylum. This cruel horror show.
Well, he's limiting it.
Well, NCLR said it's not only cruel, but it's a death sentence for many in our community, because if they're turned away, they will go back to their countries and be executed.
Well, in fact, 80 LGBT members of the caravan, who knew, from Honduras and other countries in that area, broke off from the caravan this week, got on buses, financed by a donor, and went to Tijuana, where they are now all housed in a B&B, an Airbnb, in a very ritzy neighborhood that is not happy to have them there. But these are people, we have a picture of some of them, there they are. They are fleeing deadly violence in their countries. They've all been attacked and threatened, and
many of them say back home they can't even leave the house.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous for them,
especially the trans women.
And Trump during the campaign when he held up a flag, or when he gave his acceptance speech at the convention, I will protect LGBT from ISIS. Well, what about from this?
How about from you?
Yeah, right.
And he hasn't given us any support by appointing Matt Whitaker as the acting attorney general either. Not only is Matt Whitaker a monster who thinks that judges should be picked for their adherence to biblical values.
Who thinks Marbury versus Madison was wrongly decided. Now, this was at the founding of the court. This was the whole idea of judicial review of legislative action under the Constitution. No, Matt Whitaker thinks that was wrong.
He also thinks same-sex marriage is wrong. He thinks reproductive freedom is wrong.
But on the gay front,
yes,
he went after an out-gay senator when he was in Iowa as the U.S. attorney. An out-gay senator named Matt McCoy had somebody wear a wire, brought a trumped-up case against him that was essentially, well, the guy was acquitted within 2 hours.
And that included lunch.
Yeah, but they made him, it cost Matt McCoy $100,000 that he's still paying off from this scum.
It devastated him. Luckily, he's still in the state Senate, Matt McCoy. But this was talk about a witch hunt. This was an absolutely manufactured case. Whitaker lied about the charges. The prosecutor lied. It was just horrendous.
Whitaker keynoted an anti-gay group out in Iowa when he was there, and he said, when you mentioned same-sex marriage, he said that's non-negotiable. And he was a thug in business, using his...
a total scam artist in this patent company.
I mean, give him some credit. He wants Christian judges for this country. Now, he said this.
Yes.
And Maryland is suing over the legitimacy of his appointment. Any case that he's involved in, people are going to question his legitimacy. The White House has already rationalized the thing and said, no, it's okay, it's okay.
Well, what else are they going to say? Oops, we made a mistake?
Well, I think that there was some turmoil in the White House when some of this stuff started to come out because this is the guy that he wants to get rid of Mueller.
I think that's why Trump is so depressed. I
don't even know him.
He takes
I don't know him.
He visited the Oval Office 19 times. He was an advisor to Trump. I meant socially. He gets shellacked in the elections. So he thinks he's going to
did very well.
He thinks he's going to recover by firing Sessions and hiring this guy, and suddenly the whole world comes down on his head over this guy. And then he goes to France and gets it again, and comes back and gets it again for not going to Arlington. I think Trump is very depressed.
Nobody told me that nationalism was anti-patriotic.
Well, the FBI has released its latest hate crimes report. This one covers 2017 because they're always a year behind on this stuff. And these reports, to put any faith in them is ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous to say, first of all, it's not mandatory reporting. To say that there were 7,175 hate crimes in the United States last year, there were that many today.
Yes, exactly. Nonetheless, to the extent they provide any picture, 17%, 18% reported hate crimes were for sexual orientation or gender identity.
But it was nice to see that 87% of the agencies reporting said there were no hate crimes where we are.
That'll give you an idea of how comprehensive the report is. If you would like to read reports about speaking of the legal area, the very anti-LGBT Alliance Defending Freedom that we refer to all the time on this program, there's a new group that's put together a website that diagnoses and explicates the Alliance Defending Freedom. NoGays.org. NoGays.org if you want to read up on the Alliance Defending Freedom.
And now it's up to 180 companies that are now opposing erasing transgender people from legal protections as the Trump administration is drafting.
Well, meanwhile, the public schools of Washington, D.C., right at Trump's doorstep, are going to, in the 2019-2020 school year, allow students to designate their gender identity as non-binary on their enrollment form.
Well, they better get busy with education around those issues in the D.C. schools and everywhere. Three trans people fought off an attacker with a knife. The attacker had a knife, and these trans people were hospitalized with non-threatening injuries. But wow, that happens all the time.
Now, did we want to take a look at Amy Stevens?
Yeah, I mean, the update. Amy Stevens is the transgender woman in Michigan who worked at a very, very well-received employee at a Michigan funeral home,
right.
A 6-year veteran of that. And when she transitioned, they fired her for not wearing proper attire because you're a man, the guy kept saying. And so she kept winning her cases, and
yes.
the courts, including the Court of Appeals and the Sixth Circuit, said it's sex discrimination.
On two grounds. One, because she's trans, and you're saying that she's not presenting, you're discriminating against her because she's not calling herself male, and because she is dressing in a way that you consider inappropriate for the gender you want to label her as.
Right.
So they're getting the funeral home coming and going.
The court, I want to read this quote from the court. They said it's analytically impossible to fire an employee based on status as a transgender person without being motivated, at least in part, by the employee's sex. Now, this is a concept supported by the Obama administration, supported by the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, but now opposed by the Trump administration. However, the Supreme Court's supposed to decide on November 30th whether to take this case. The Solicitor General of the United States says, well, you know, we don't believe in her case, but we would rather you didn't take this case and you take the sexual orientation cases that are saying it's sex discrimination.
And part of that is a complication because the EEOC is still supporting Amy Stevens. So there's this wacky thing where the Justice Department opposes her, but also has to represent the EEOC. So it's ridiculously complicated. But she's won everything so far. She should win.
And we've won some of these sexual orientation cases too, but I guess they think with this court that that's not going to be as heavy a lift.
Let us dip our toe into the religious field. In Kentucky, the Baptist Convention has kicked out several churches from its coalition because they are supportive of LGBT affirming churches.
In Albany, New York, now the Episcopal Church in July passed a thing that you've got to do same-sex marriage in your dioceses. Individual priests don't have to do it, but if somebody's got to do it. But there's one bishop holding out on that, and his name is, I kid you not, William Love. Wait a minute.
He's the Episcopal Bishop of Albany, New York.
He says the Episcopal Church has been hijacked by the gay rights agenda and, quote...
What is this, 1983?
Wait a minute. Quote, Satan is having a heyday bringing division into the church on these issues. Now, he doesn't mean heyday. He means, what is it, a field day. Satan is having a field day. Satan's heyday was in the Middle Ages. Anyway, he's
How long did it take you to think that up?
I wrote a story about it this afternoon, so I was able to come up with that. Some parishioners at St. Andrew's Parish in Albany burned his directive on the steps of the church.
Thank you. And
the presiding bishop now, Michael Curry, you remember him from Meghan and Harry's wedding? There, he has to now decide what kind of discipline to impose on Bishop Love.
Well, the Bishop of Central New York, a neighboring diocese, has condemned this and is...
Well, everybody should condemn it.
Yeah, I think mostly they have.
It's against church policy.
All right, should we get to the good news?
Well, you did D.C.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. I don't have enough. There's
Go ahead.
More bad news. I mean, Well, actually, you want to call this good news that 85% of primary care physicians are willing to provide routine care to trans patients?
Yes.
I guess that's progress. That means that 15% say, "Get out of my office."
Well, that's probably expectable.
And it was also horrible that in Dallas, jailers there forced a trans woman to show her genitals.
Yes.
She's suing them over this because they said, we don't believe that you're a woman, and she got arrested for bringing. And she's one of the people she's suing is Lupe Valdez, the out lesbian sheriff of Dallas,
who lost the governor's race.
Yeah.
I want to get to the tree. Can we get to the tree?
Yeah, please. It's a wonderful story.
Okay, so every year, as you know, Rockefeller Center in New York puts up this ginormous Christmas tree.
They should have planted one there in 1930 when they built the building, but no, they keep killing one and bringing it in. I'm sorry I had to say that.
So there's a lesbian couple a couple of hours north of New York City in Wallkill, New York, not far from Poughkeepsie. And there they are. They
had just moved there.
Lissette Gutierrez and Shirley Figueroa. Now, Shirley, I think it's Shirley, always had this dream of supplying a tree to Rockefeller Center. And in their previous house, they had a tree, and she would fertilize that tree in hopes that it would grow into a Rockefeller Center-sized tree. No such luck. So they moved, and her wife tells her, in this new house, there's a tree there that Rockefeller Center has had its eye on.
Yes.
And Shirley thinks, she's lying to me. She's making this up to make me buy this new house.
Oh.
But it turns out it's true.
Now you lost your tree.
Rockefeller Center did have their eye on the tree. And sure enough, they picked it, and This tree is now, you see it being installed in front of Rockefeller Center. That is a tree that the lesbians call Shelby.
72-foot Norway spruce.
It's going to be lit in a ceremony on national television on November 28th. It'll be up until January 7th, at which point it'll be chopped up for wood for Habitat for Humanity to build houses.
That's nice.
And I can't wait for all the feature pieces on Lissette and Shirley that will run around the lighting of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree.
By the way, lots of good things are supposed to be able to happen in New York now that we have a Democratic Senate, and among them is passing the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act, maybe secure abortion rights, maybe universal health care, folks.
I'm just happy we have a lesbian Christmas tree.
Another New York State story. So disgraced Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is not going to face criminal charges over the abuse of 4 women because, quote, state law allows some punching and slapping without consent if it's for sexual gratification, according to the prosecutor who was appointed by the governor in this case, the woman from Nassau County.
I would say it must be consensual.
Well, that's apparently not the law. There has to be evidence of substantial pain. And so this DA from Nassau County is proposing a new law to make it a misdemeanor without proof of substantial pain if the victim has, quote, deep emotional wounds. And I have to say, there's very few...
Don't we all have deep emotional wounds?
From relationships,
yes.
So I'd be careful about that.
It sounds messy, but I don't like the fact that you can hit people without consent.
In the course of sex.
I don't care in what
If there's not
context.
substantial pain, there has to be substantial pain. I'm just reading you the law.
I understand. You've said that.
All right.
I am saying I want consent.
Okay.
Can we move on to what have you got?
We can. Well, the murderer, the guy who accused of murdering Blaise Bernstein out in California there, the gay kid, is pleaded not guilty. He's a big white supremacist.
I would expect no less.
All right. Yes,
International
please.
news. All right. Well, I think the big news is from Guyana. In 2009, 4 trans women were arrested for wearing dresses in public. There they are now. They were arrested, they were imprisoned for 3 nights, they were convicted, and they were punished.
Fined.
But they went to court, and they have spent 9 years fighting the law that says that people are not allowed to cross-dress in public for improper purpose.
Now, the magistrate judge in the original case said, I order you to go to church, give your lives to Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
And she said, and the judge, I don't know if it was a man.
Was that Mark Whitaker in a previous life?
I don't know if it was a man or a woman. The magistrate said, you're confused about your sexuality. And this was upheld by the Guyana High Court and the Guyana's Court of Appeals. So it was denied by the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is
9 years later, the Caribbean Court of Justice has struck down the law.
Who chided the lower court, or the magistrate, for proselytizing.
And said that the law was too vague because what is for improper purpose.
And this case was brought by the Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination. So activists saw this through.
It's a huge victory, and congratulations to them.
But we are very worried about West Sumatra, where 20 to 30,000 people marched to criminalize gay sex in Indonesia. The local mayor there called it a virus that has to be wiped out. Wow.
We have a picture
of the demonstration there
against,
in Indonesia, in West Sumatra.
A couple of them. There's one picture of the crowd demonstrating against us in Indonesia. And I'm confused about whether that and the demonstration in outside Jakarta were the same thing. There's another picture, also anti-LGBT.
Well, there was a pro-march for LGBT equality in Chile that's planned, for November 17th. It's called Basta de Blah Blah. In other words, enough blah blah, let's act on LGBT rights.
Well, it's marriage specifically because the Inter-American Court of Human Rights has mandated marriage for South and Central America, and the outgoing president of Chile promised marriage, Michelle Bachelet, But the new president, who is very right-wing, is stalling, even though he promised coming into office that he would follow through on the previous president's promise. And the legislature is stalling. So this demonstration on Saturday, I think, is going to be a big deal. And I love Basta de blah blah. I think that's what we ought to call all our marches, too. Basta de blah blah.
Yes, enough with the blah blah. But Scotland is installing. They're formally integrating LGBTI issues into the curricula in all state schools at all age levels. This is fighting homophobia. This is teaching LGBTI history. We've
been begging for that here forever.
We're making some progress, even in New York and some other places.
Well, California, I think, is the only place that's mandated it.
Yeah.
And even they have not followed through fully.
Well, New York has had some new policies as well. But of course, this was all banned under Section 28 in the entire United Kingdom under Margaret Thatcher.
Scotland is more progressive. The Switzerland Parliament is moving to add sexual orientation and gender identity to their non-discrimination laws. They haven't done marriage yet, but they're...
The penalty for violating it is 3 years in prison or a fine. Prison?
There you go.
All right. Usually it's civil, just civil penalties.
We've been telling you about problems in Tanzania. 10 men arrested at a supposed gay wedding in Zanzibar are going to have anal exams. Well, the World Bank has suspended all travel by its employees to Tanzania.
And Tunisia's on an anti-gay kick, and they're going to use your personal data on your computer and anal tests for prosecution.
Must we remind our audience that these anal exams are useless and not a good indicator of anyone's homosexuality? In Poland, the president says he would consider doing a no promo homo law like Russia has. And the schools were going to hold a Rainbow Friday, but a lot of them were intimidated out of it. But the Polish Scouting Association has announced its support of LGBT people.
And the Coahuila, Mexico state has passed a gender identity protection law.
They are a border state with the United States. They were the first to pass marriage equality as a state in Mexico. We're looking forward to the November 24th votes in Taiwan for and against same-sex marriage. That's going to be a mess.
And in Armenia, the Eastern European and Central Asia Forum Conference of LGBTI Christians was canceled after a series of death threats. This is a country where the prime minister referred to LGBTI equality as a headache in parliament and said family values are important to him. Armenia ranks 48th out of 49 European countries, according to ILGA Europe.
Liberia is pondering criminalizing same-sex marriage. And in Nigeria, they're putting up anti-LGBT billboards with sponsorship by a Chinese cell phone company. Sweet.
Okay.
AIDS news, do you have any? I don't have any this
don't.
week. I guess AIDS is taking the week off. And in entertainment
Well, we're
news,
coming up on World AIDS Day, December 1st.
That's true.
So
We'll
check
hear
your
a lot
local
more.
listings for activities in your area.
I finally watched Love, Simon. It's running on HBO now. It is a little romantic comedy about a gay
After
boy.
school special.
Yes, it is kind of like that.
It's sweet.
I didn't regret watching it, and it has, I guess, a few clever moments, and I like the other guy.
The what?
The other guy.
The other guy.
Yeah, I
well,
won't give
we won't
too
give
much
it away.
away.
We won't give it away because it's a surprise.
It's not a waste of time. It's not anything revolutionary, but,
Well,
mainstream.
that director, Greg Berlanti, I
Yes.
think, he's making a new biopic on Rock Hudson.
Well, there's a lot there.
Yes.
A lot has been told already. Let's see if he finds any new angles. And also on HBO, I watched this new series, Sally Forever. It is crazy.
What's it about, Ann?
It's a half-hour British sitcom
Oh, right,
that
yes.
it's going to have like 7 episodes or something.
It's the woman from Love Actually who was the caterer,
yes,
right?
And it's a very drab London girl who's engaged to this drab guy who he asks her to marry him, and she says, "Oh, okay." and he's just horrible. And so she sneaks out one night and goes to a club and meets up with this woman who she was making eye contact with on the subway. And they get very wild together. And the whole thing about this show is that bodily fluids everywhere and sex, and it's very funny. And,
nudity?
A lot. And
that used to be the calling card of HBO,
yeah.
the selling point.
Sally
Nudity.
Forever, definitely cute.
Okay. Rapper Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, who was already...
Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yes, and certainly gender fluid for years.
As a model, modeling skirts.
But has emphatically declared that Tyler, the Creator, is his MFing boyfriend. He said this about 10 times from the stage, although Tyler, the Creator, is calling him a crazy N-word man. And we just don't know if it was just a publicity stunt or if it's true. But it seems to be Jaden's coming out as a gay person.
Yeah, he's 20. I think he is out. And he has been very gender fluid. And Will Smith seems to be supportive, even after the old story about him appearing in 6 Degrees of Separation and refusing to do a kiss with another man.
As a gay man.
On the advice of Denzel Washington.
I went to a benefit honoring Harvey Fierstein, and he talked about doing La Cage aux Folles with
Kelsey
Grammer in the lead. And by this time, Arthur Lawrence, who wrote it, was dead. Arthur Lawrence would not allow the men to kiss at the end, even though Arthur Lawrence was dead. They could only hold hands at the end as they went off into the sunset.
Well, he was a little persnickety.
So Harvey insisted on kissing in this production, and he said I'm telling tales out of school, but he said when Kelsey did it, he would put his hand over his mouth. When he was with Douglas Hodge, he would put his hand over his mouth. Whereas then they were replaced by Harvey Fierstein and Christopher Sieber, who's in The Prom, more about which later, and they rolled around and kissed and did everything they could.
Okay.
All right.
I also saw Amazing Grace, the Aretha Franklin documentary, which played at the New York City Documentary Festival that's on now. And this is the movie that's been legendary and never seen. It was made in 1972. It has been the subject of much curiosity, anger, litigation ever since. Sidney Pollack shot it. Aretha Franklin, who was at the height of her pop career and 29 years old, went to a small Baptist church in Los Angeles to do a gospel concert. There couldn't have been more than 150 people in the seats, very modest little space. And this film is an hour and a half of her singing gospel. Mick Jagger is in the audience. Her father is there, and he gets up and speaks at one point about what a wonderful person and singer she is. That's very moving. Reverend C.L. Franklin. Reverend James Cleveland is the MC for all of this, and the choir behind her is just spectacular. And to hear the purity of her voice at 29 singing these gospel songs is very, very moving. So it will be released shortly in theaters, Amazing Grace with Aretha Franklin. It's really just a gospel concert film, but very modest and really worth seeing.
Well, opening tonight, if you're watching this in New York, or if you're watching it on YouTube beforehand, buy your tickets, The Prom. This is a new musical. I didn't know much about it. It sounds like it had a ridiculous premise. You've got there they are, a bunch of Broadway narcissists, right? They're in a show that sort of fails, and they want to boost their image. So they say, let's take up a cause. And they look online and they say, oh, there's this lesbian in Indiana who wants to go to a prom. Let's go help her. So they show up with signs that say, Les is more, and things like that. Anyway, the it was. I think this is the best show on musical, at least on Broadway. Ferryman is the best show. There you had Beth Lavelle, who's wonderful. Brooks.
She was in Fun Home, right? No, I'm thinking of someone else.
Beth Lavelle was in the Drowsy Chaperone. She won the Tony.
Okay.
Brooks Ashmanskis. Now, he played, I thought, an offensive gay stereotype in Something Rotten. Now, this is also directed by Casey Nicholaw. He plays a gay stereotype again, and he is terrific. Christopher Sieber, who I mentioned, Angie Schworer, and Josh Lemon. They're all stereotypes, but what they do so successfully here is they humanize them. They make them into people, and it makes it so beautiful. And Michael Potts, African-American actor, plays the principal of the school. He's a liberal, and they're coming and saying, we want her to go to the prom. He says, yeah, I want to go to the prom too. I've got some problem parents here. And the lesbian is played by Caitlin Kinnunen. She's the brave young lesbian. So it's a wholly original show. A lot of it is show business, inside jokes, maybe, but it's. I was so moved by the end of this thing. I wept for the last 15 minutes of the show. Just being moved by the fun of it and the joy of it.
You've been doing a lot of crying lately.
I am, because it's a hard time in this country. It didn't
and
take
you're
me
aging.
much. It didn't take much to get me going. The prom, get your tickets now.
Well, you saw something else that was not, did not make you weep for
King Kong?
joy. Yes.
One of my favorite movies as a kid. They drained all the drama out of it. And the big thing, and I went with Bill Bauman, who stayed for the whole thing. But at least he liked the monkey. But the monkey is like, you see the men operating the hands and the things and the wires. Well, no, this is by the same guy who wrote the Harry Potter show.
Calling it a monkey infantilizing? Isn't it a great ape?
It is. There he is. He's a great ape. But I was, God, I couldn't have been more bored. Anyway, and we saw American Son.
Yes, which I forgot about that.
Which stars Kerry Washington and Stephen Pasquale.
Which I found disappointing.
They're a divorced couple. Their son their mixed race son has been arrested. They're in a Florida police station where Jeremy Jordan is the cop on duty and Eugene Lee is an older cop. And it's a kind of a mystery and a race drama, lots of racial tension.
I didn't think there was much mystery.
And I'll just say it, I'm not going to tell you what it is, the most abrupt ending of a show I've ever seen in my life.
And yet predictable.
Well acted, though.
Yeah, but I didn't see an enormous amount of point to it, given our real-life discussion of these issues all the time, and the real-life video we see.
By the way, a show that I loved, Gloria, A Life, about Gloria Steinem, has been extended to March 31st, 2019.
I also saw a movie called Who Will Save the Roses, an Italian, older, really aged gay men movie. It's sweet, it's romantic, it's opening in LA this weekend and available on video on demand. But not, it's just a sweet, romantic, older movie.
And the actor Ezra Miller, who was in Fantastic Beasts, says he's queer, which means I don't identify. And he doesn't identify as a man or a woman either.
And there's a fascinating show at the Japan Society by Yasumasu Masa Morimuro that's all about gender screwing around. That's not very elegant. It's a fascinating show that's getting rave reviews at the Japan Society. Check it out. I think you will enjoy that.
Gender is a changing concept in this country and in the world.
Here's another better picture. All right. Well, we will see you next week. I think we may have a few more.
For our Thanksgiving show.
And thanks to the organization that made us one of the 25 top gay podcasts. See you next week.